Israel Adesanya talking about moving up, champ squared. Jan Blachowicz saying, let's do it in March. Let's do some fireworks. I mean, obviously, what we're talking about here is Adesanya going for 2 belts, going for that 205 crown. Drake, what do we think here?
I mean, it feels, it's one of those cases where it feels kind of definitely too soon, right? And I mean, we've kind of gotten over this wave of double champs, right? Like last year, a little bit of end of 2018 was all about, okay, can we win two titles in 2 divisions? And that's died down a lot this year so far. I mean, obviously we had a little break with things and everything, but yeah, it feels like potentially going back to this recent trend we just got out of, if it is to happen. But yeah, it feels a little bit too soon, definitely. But at the same time, as we were looking at breaking down the card from last week with Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier, and everything, there's surprisingly limited options in terms of top contenders, right? I mean, Whittaker knocked off the guy who was the next guy, assuming he won. Cannonier wins the fight, no brainer. That's the fight to make, him and Israel. Then Whittaker goes out there and does his thing. He's the guy now. But he lost very recently still to Adesanya, and convincingly. Got finished in the second round. You think he won the first round, but that's what it is.
He did. I will die on that hill. He won the first round until the knockdown. Until the knockdown. What's the first 4 minutes he won?
Need to rewatch it just for that. Yeah, so it's a weird, it kind of, you could say maybe a special case with him. Like, I wouldn't be super mad because, I mean, okay, I'd have to look at the light heavyweight side of things. That's where it would be more problematic for me because Blachowicz, brand new champion. He's been around. He has fought a lot of the guys, but there's this influx of new talent and everything. Yuri Prochazka just got matched up with Dominic Reyes. He wins that fight. He's fucking totally in line. Give him the title shot all day. That's amazing. I hope that happens just because I love Yuri. So then they kind of is the same thing there at light heavyweight because assuming, I mean, if Reyes knocks out Yuri, then it's like, okay, kind of Whittaker-ish, similar situation. I mean, I'm blanking on, I don't have the rankings up here, but who's like right behind
Reyes? I mean, we're looking at 205, right? Another potential contender that's right there is if Santos knocks off Teixeira. Santos already has a win over Jan.
True.
Had that knockout win. It'd be hard to deny him a shot, especially because he had that close fight with Jones. So, I'm with you that at 205, it's a little bit murkier because Jan is a brand new champ. There are options there that make sense or matchups that either Jan's lost or haven't happened yet. But at 185, it's a top-heavy division, and Adesanya's run through most everybody. And as you mentioned, Whittaker seems to be the next in line, but he doesn't even really want it right away, right? He said, like, you know what? Yeah, he's like, you know what? I'm going to take time for my family, got a baby coming, all of that. If we line up, awesome. If he wants to go do 205, great. I'll fight him when he comes back down. I mean, he's not out here saying, like, I demand that title shot. He's not making a huge case. He's like, whatever. So I think from 185, from Israel's standpoint, it makes sense to move up. 205, that gets a little bit murkier. Now, here's a question, a little bit of a curveball. What happens if you do Jones versus Izzy not for the title at 205? Is that a possibility? I mean, right? They've been going back and forth on that. Jones vacated the belt. Could they really do a 205 fight between those two without the belt on the line?
That's the thing that I hate about kind of their little mini rivalry now, is that it means really nothing to me now besides seeing. I mean, I would still love to see it, right? But it feels so weird now that the light heavyweight belt would not be involved. Like, hey, John, can you try and make 185? That'd be perfect. That would be an ideal situation, right? Give an instant contender there if he's not getting the top shot at heavyweight, right? So that would be perfect, but that's not happening. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would still do well, I think, but I mean, what? The UFC would make an interim belt for Jon Jones and Adesanya? How fucking weird would that be?
Especially since Jones didn't even lose. He just said, you know what, I'm giving it up. And then Jan wins the belt. It's like...
he's like, okay, guys.
Right. It's so strange. I think Jones is going to move up to heavyweight. I think Adesanya moving up is something they'll probably push through just from a business standpoint, right? You get double champ status then. and then you could have Jones come back and fight Adesanya, or you can roll with the double champ at 185 and 205 because the divisions aren't quite as deep, right? This isn't McGregor holding up two very stacked divisions and then not defending the belts. This is, Izzy's fought everyone at 185 right now, other than a rematch with Whittaker. And at 205, you've got new matchups, and you've got Yuri, who has a strong case. You've got Santos if he gets past Teixeira. But even then,
even Glover, though, not to cut you off, but
even Glover, true. Yes. No, that's a great point. He's come back renewed, but that also tells you not to knock on Glover, because I love that he's had this late resurgence, but the fact that he's in the title mix in 2020 is just, that tells you about the depth of 205. Yeah, it's it's. I guess the final point on this: do you think it happens? Do we get Adesanya versus Jan in March? Is that the fight? Whether we think it should be made or not, will the UFC book it?
Oh man, that is a really tough question. I don't think so, because of the light heavyweight aspect, right? I think that from a pure standpoint, that's the standpoint I always start from, because that's what I am. Santos and Glover, winner of that should get the title shot no matter what, I would say. But then I think, let's say Glover wins and then Yuri wins. I think they give it to Yuri over Glover, just because kind of a fresher face, probably a more exciting fight for more people on paper. But if Santos wins, then I think that that's easy for them to do too, because everybody still remembers, the Jones fight, and he's just a crazy guy in general. Whereas, with 185, I don't know, they figure something out there, but I feel like it depends on what happens in the meantime with these light heavyweight fights. And I mean, the Yuri and Reyes one, that's kind of far out, right? So I mean, maybe they won't even think about that February, right? So.
Yeah. So I think I'm with you. I think Yuri versus Reyes, I think if they end up booking a title fight for, say, March at 205, then maybe winner of Yuri and Reyes gets a shot if Yuri wins, because I doubt they'd let Reyes back in that quickly. But I also think it will come down to how these fights go, right? If Santos versus Teixeira is a boring decision, I could see them saying, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and throw in Adesanya versus Jan. If Santos goes out there, destroys Teixeira, or Teixeira looks, like a man reborn and just crushes Santos and makes a big call out, I think they'll go ahead and book it that way. I don't know if either that's going to happen. I'd actually be very amped to see that, especially if then out of nowhere Rumble Johnson, who's been in these kind of testicles, shows up just like,
wild card.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I think that makes sense. And then at 185, of course you do Whittaker versus Romero 3 for the interim title. That makes perfect sense. So, why not?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they could make up light heavyweight BMF for Jones and Adesanya. They could do fucking something crazy. It feels too weird. It feels too weird without a belt. As much as just from a business standpoint, they wouldn't do it that way. They just wouldn't.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. They'd have to have a belt. They'd have to have something. I mean, I think the only fight that Jones does without a belt is maybe Ngannou at heavyweight. Otherwise, it's going to have to be for a belt. And even then, that would be kind of iffy. They'd probably make it for an interim heavyweight or something of that nature. Yeah. So, yep. So I think we're decided then. BMF at 205. There you go. You heard it here first.
Watch and learn.